that your time at school in your early days would have been pretty tough too, because children pick up on things like that, don't they?
I suppose I was bullied for the first 10 years, but then I was such a fighter. The tables turned quite radically. I was probably bullied more for the lisp and the speech impediment, because I had to have vocabulary lessons to learn to speak properly, because it was as if I had the cleft mouth. I couldn't form words at all. So that was the brunt of much humour. But by the time I was 11, I was so determined and so strong, and nothing was going to get in my way.
Did any of this, perhaps in later life, reflecting on it, make you question whatever faith you finally arrived at?
No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. I've known my God since I woke up in this body. And I woke up in this body around the age of 4. And what I mean by that, it's that first realization that we are a speck of dust, a speck in time. We are eternal. We're ever shifting and we're ever transforming. But the moment I had that realization, I knew my God. And never for one moment would I doubt him, because every negative that happens in this life makes us stronger. It makes our metal that much more kind of impenetrable. And I just never had a problem with that. How can you blame the Creator? I mean, you can't blame someone for something as almost as superficial as one leg longer than the other. It ain't a problem. I can get round it.
You've chosen as your first hymn, Ding Dong Merrily on High.
I love that title.
Well, it almost sings itself, doesn't it?
It's almost mad.
Why?
Well, it's obviously one of the first hymns I learnt as a child, and you never forget those hymns because you never forget the gut feeling they gave you. And for however bad I was at school, however badly behaved, no matter how much people hated me or thought that I was a bully or the most evil person on earth, heaven forbid anyone interfere with my hymn singing.
Later life, as a teenager, you were quite a rebel, weren't you?
I wasn't a happy teenager, and I knew I had to leave home and I had to get out into the outside world to become and to blossom. Now, at this point, I was at a school for academics. I am not academic, I am purely instinctive. And I had to get out of that school, and I hated everything the school had to offer. I hated its femininity, I hated its ideals, I just needed to get out. But in retrospect, if I hadn't have gone to that school, I would not have the moral background that I grew up with. And they really taught me my morals very well.
Which became very important to you.
Incredibly important.
We'll come to that in just a tick, but I'm interested to find out a little bit more about Toyah Willcox, the rebel teenager with, I suspect, multicoloured hair even in those days.
I did dye my hair when I was first at school, yes. I shaved off the back of it, and I had kind of blue hair, then pink hair. I had a very long pointed fringe down to my nose, known as the Spock. I went through a phase where I wouldn't go home, and my parents were just terrified, and often I'd get home and the police were out looking for me because I'd been gone for more than 48 hours.
You boozed a bit too, didn't you?
I drank all the time. But that started very young, because Mum and Dad, as they did in the early 60s, it was customary to have a little drinks trolley. Well, I just helped myself to that all the time, and they never doubted that their 9-year-old daughter was drinking.
You mixed with bikers?
I love motorbikes. I think motorbikes are fantastic, and I did mix with bikers. Mum and Dad asked to meet my mysterious friends once, because they just wanted to know where I was disappearing to and who I was disappearing with. So I invited the bikers round, and as smelly and tatty and awful as we looked, I mean, some of them were lords. They were, you know, titled gentry.
But rebels too.
But rebels too. And I invited them round for tea, and you could hear the rumble 3 miles away as 50 bikers turned up outside our house. And Mum made them cucumber sandwiches.
I mean, how concerned did Mum and Dad become about you? Because I would imagine that in the 1960s, I know a lot of people rebelled, but this was quite serious stuff, wasn't it?
My mother was terribly, terribly upset. My mother thought I was demonic.
Possessed by the devil, you mean?
Yeah, she thought I was possessed by the devil. She was convinced at one stage I was not her daughter anymore. She said, this is not the child I brought into the world. And I didn't realise how desperately sad that was, or how painful it was for her, until I decided at 14 to be christened because my mother said that one of the things she felt guilty about was out of 3 children, I was the one that wasn't christened, and she felt as if this was some curse upon the family.
Some reason for your behaviour?
Yeah. And she mentioned this to me, and I have never had a problem in having a relationship with God. I just love the history of the Bible and the stories of the Bible. They are just intensely rich. And I put myself up for religious education, and I had to go into really deep, focused religious education for about 3 months. We needed godparents for the christening, and no one came forward.
Why? Because of your behaviour?
They just wouldn't come near me. And they thought perhaps I was going to do something terrible at the christening. They just didn't want to know. And my history teacher came forward, and she said, I will be your godparent, kind of to gasps around the school. Everyone thought she was very brave. And then the Samaritan that my mother went to when she was desperate about me came forward and became my godmother. And it was then I realised that she'd been to the Samaritans about me. And that hurts, that okay, you're rebellious, but you never realise how much someone is scared of you. And she was really frightened of me.
Scared of you or scared for you?
Probably both, being a mother.
Did it do the trick, the baptism and the confirmation? Did it actually change your ways?
It didn't change my ways. Nothing would change my ways.
You've chosen as your second hymn, Once in Royal David's City.
This, for me, is kind of a mournful hymn. It's the power of music, the power of choice in the keys and the harmonic structure that you choose can, move something very deep within you. And this, as a child, when I sang it, almost hurt me because of the bleakness of that child being born into potential materialistic poverty and the desperation of the parents. And even as a young child singing that, I could feel the homeless in the snow.
We talk now a little bit about what was happening to your faith at this period in your time. You've been brought up in a private school, you've been brought up with a traditional religious education. That was what your parents wanted for you. What did Toyah Willcox want for herself?
Well, I've always felt that life is a constant journey. It's not, you just don't go to school, get a job and then retire. It's not like that at all. It's a constant journey. I was very lucky that my father, during the war, travelled in the Middle East. So he had a very strong background of Buddhism and Hinduism. And he very much gave me that education. Even though I was brought up Church of England, I was just constantly searching, and I still am searching in many ways. So even though I don't go to church today, and I don't read the Bible every day, I am very much the daughter of Christ, as it were. You can feel it. It's in my soul.
But if you regard yourself as a child of Christ, what or who are you searching for, do you think?
I believe we're born many times, and every time we're born, we must evolve. Therefore, we can't live in the past. We live to bring the future to us, to bring it forward. Therefore, I'm just finding or looking as to how Christianity and how faith and spirituality work today and for the future.
I find it very interesting because in the rest of your life, you're a very single-minded person, aren't you? I mean, you're very single-minded about...
It's probably my sin, though, isn't it, that I'm single-minded?
Is it? I don't know. Is it a sin? I mean, you're very single-minded about your career, about what you wanted to do, about going on the stage. You're very single-minded morally. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that...
That's what surprises people, because even my family was surprised.
Yes.
That the moral side is my law.
You were a virgin until you were 20.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, in the era you were brought up in,
it's very rare.
Was unusual. Now, why were you so single-minded about things like that?
Well, it isn't as religious as you think. I wanted a career. I didn't want men getting in the way of that. All my girlfriends, when I was around 14, it was very fashionable for them to become pregnant, purely because it would get them out of school and it would get them into a one-parent flat. I found this terrifying, and I lost all my friends when I was 15 because I decided to take my O-levels. They couldn't understand this. They thought I was absolutely mad. And especially knowing the rebel I was, they thought, what are you doing? You want an education? I said, no, it's not that I want an education. I want a life. Life does not start by becoming pregnant at 14. Instinctively, I just felt that if you want to get pregnant, that a voice speaks to you. I mean, we all have an inner voice. It could be our own subconscious voice. It could be the voice of God. We all have it, and we all have a right to that voice. And I've always believed that if there is a soul waiting to be born, it presents itself to you.
And a soul in particular presented himself to you a little later in life, and that was your now husband, Robert Fripp, the musician.
Yes.
What was so special, to put it very simply, about Robert? I mean, what was the spiritual communion you had together, or union you had together?
He's as mad as I am. He had an instinct that he was going to meet his wife. And he went round telling everyone in his bachelor world that I'm flying to England, I'm going to meet my wife. And he's eccentric, so people accepted this. He flew to England and accidentally met me. He asked me to work with him on an album, so I went down to work in his studio down in Dorset. And within a week of working with him, he said, I know you're my wife, I'm not going to waste time, will you marry me? That was a bit of a surprise for me, I can tell you, but it wasn't physical. It was, well, at this point, a platonic friendship, but there was an incredible depth there. There was a touching of souls, and I'm probably not intellectual enough to describe it, but I am sensitive enough to know it was there. And we very much became a spiritual bonding.
It was typically a slightly unusual wedding, wasn't it? I say typical,
Yes, it
typical
was.
for you, because you didn't have hymns.
We didn't have any music.
But instead of hymns, you had silence.
Silence. Yes, just beautiful silence. A lot of people are scared of silence. But is there such a thing as silence? It's usually filled with subconscious thought.
Well, from silence to the very rousing Jerusalem, which is your next choice. Why that?
Oh, I just love this song. I've always loved it. I've always loved singing it, because no matter how bad a singer you are, this is a song that unites everybody. 13 years.
Coming up 13, that's right. You don't see much of him, though, do you?
He's permanently on the road. He's a guitarist, so he's permanently touring. This year, I've seen him for 4 days, and he's promised me he's going to be home for the summer. But usually we have this policy that we try and spend 2 weeks together after every 3 weeks away. But, you know, you can't always stick to that.
And you're both happy with that?
I'd like to see more of him, because he's my bestest friend, and I'm as in love with him today, if not more, than the day we first got married. And I miss him terribly. But he's a very, very good man. He phones at least 5 times a day, so there's a presence there.
And you've taken a decision, I think I'm right in saying, not to have children.
Yeah.
Could you tell me why?
Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm supposed to have babies, or even have the right to have babies. It would be unfair to bring a child into my world. And I don't mean that my, kind of on a selfish sense. I am incapable of relaxing, being still, being calm. I'm probably quite difficult to be with. Therefore, I found the right partner, and we've decided that we shouldn't share our lives with children.
What's your last choice of him?
Oh, Mighty Invisible.
Now, why that one?
It's just a good, rip-roaring anthem. There's something about me, that kind of image of Boadicea standing on the chariot, kind of going forward into the future, ready for battle, not letting anything get in your way. And this is another one of those hymns. I've always felt that if I'm going to be remembered for anything, it's for women surging forward to make their place on earth, not to be secondary creatures. And as much as I love Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity, all of the faiths all have something incredibly fantastic to offer us. I cannot accept that women are second-class creatures. And I think that's why my spiritual search has always made me so stubborn to commit. Because as soon as I meet someone, as fantastic as they are, if you tell me I'm a second-class creature, I'm not having it.
And you can reconcile all of these thoughts, can you, and still call yourself a child of Christ?
See, I don't believe Christ ever thought women were second class. I believe the true word of Christ was everyone was equal.
Toyah Willcox, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.